Dave Nagel, tell us about how many ICCFs you've done in your life and what about the benefits you've gained from them or what you see?
Thanks, Marianne. It's been my good fortune to go to all of these ICCFs over the years. Francesco Celani from Italy and I have that distinction at the moment. He will last longer than I will. He's much younger. But I was also able to co-chair two of these, and they've been a large part of my life. I'm in my 60th year of working. I've been involved in this field for 30 years, and Bill said it very well. It's a marvelous combination of technical, scientific, engineering, focus on one hand, and the development of friendships, people from around the world in academia and companies and all. So it's a gift in my life to have been involved in these conferences. Thank you.
Dave Nagel, what was your impression upon coming here? What do you think?
Delighted to be here. This is a marvelous place, as Bill said, in all respects. And someone has even scheduled very good weather, so we're looking forward to an exciting week. This is very pleasant. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's go on to talking about the subject we're here for, cold fusion, LENR, CMNS. 30 years of it. You've all been here pretty much through the duration. So we say the fire is still lit. So from a strictly scientific point of view, what has changed in 30 years regarding our knowledge of the phenomenon? Could you each address that? We'll start with Bill. What's changed? Like in this time, we certainly are things that we know have changed, that we know more about. But why don't you address this, Dave?
In a somewhat simplistic fashion, I divide the world up in this field to experimental and theoretical concerns. That is laboratory evidence and true scientific understanding. And as far as the experimental evidence goes, we went from an uncertain situation, controversial situation in the early years to one where we now have what I assert is a bulletproof case for the existence of low-energy nuclear reactions. There is evidence for tritium generation, a very easy thing to measure. It doesn't occur in the environment. Many experiments have shown that you can generate tritium. Bill just referred to helium generation, which has been seen in many experiments, correlated with the heat at about the right level, right compared to the known energetics of nuclei. And then there are other reaction products. And then there's the heat, which has been measured with very good signal to noise in many, many types of experiments, electrochemical experiments, hot gas experiments, plasma experiments. So on the experimental side, I argue, much to the consternation of some of my colleagues, that we're in a very, very strong position. On the theoretical side, we still don't understand the basic physics of this field. And until we do that, then the scientific community more broadly, people outside of this field who are potentially interested in it, don't have something that they can sink their teeth into, read papers about ideas and equations and theoretical results and how they compare with experiments. So we have a mixed situation. It's strong and exciting on one side. It's frustrating and slow, as you said, Bill, on the other side. So that's one perspective on that question.
The results of the cold fusion experiments are still defined as controversial. Do you agree with this definition, or do you think that's a result of prejudice that has accompanied this kind of studies? Dave Nagel?
Well, it's safe to say that the field is still controversial because of the bad start, which is remembered by many people despite the 30 years that have passed. But I say, rather than being a prejudice, I view it as a matter of ignorance, as ignorance. It is being ignored by the scientific community. The data from these many experiments, thousands of experiments, hundreds of which have produced solid results that are documented in good papers, some in referee journals, but many of them on the internet. If people paid attention to that, they would see that there is no way to get rid of all of those results. In other words, one has to accept the reality of LENR and its characteristics if one is willing to stop and look at the literature. But people in general are not doing that because the field has not yet achieved a legitimate membership in the scientific community. And lacking that membership, lacking recognition, we don't have respect and we don't have resources. So younger people and academics, even people who hope to get rich on this, are reluctant to dig into the available information. And it's understandable that they're reluctant. There's no motivation other than intellectual curiosity, which brings many of us here. But there's that barrier. So I view the situation as one in which we are being ignored at a time when there's a mountain of available information that could change this field very quickly. Thank you.
Dave, before I move you off that question, do you mind throwing out some examples of the high-quality research, the researchers, where they're from, what they did, even just quick bullet points, just because I don't think the whole world outside even has an idea of the caliber of intellectual firepower that's been working on this.
Yeah, Bill mentioned the correlation between heat and helium started by Miles. I think there are 16 papers now that report both effects and their correlation. I will happily turn to my colleague on the left here as having done, what, 100,000 hours or more of high precision calorimetry, that while it didn't result in large energy gains, had very, very good signal noise, it was bulletproof information offered in multiple conferences, as Mike said, in papers that were following them. Very, very good work. Here in Italy, the work by Vittorio Violanti and his colleagues is similarly thorough. Work at some small companies, Coolescence comes to mind now. Very, very thorough research work. So I think if I had prepared for this question, which you just asked, I could rattle off maybe 20, but they're out there and they're readily available. This field will triumph in the end and be very, very important to mankind. Much of the basis for my statement about being ignored is born of interacting with the Department of Energy in the United States, the Department of Defense, a major user of energy, and other parts of the government. And they're simply unwilling to fund the kind of research that the large companies that Mike cited, are Google in particular, now funding. So what I call ignorance is not absolute, but it is very, very broad, and to the detriment of the development of the field. We can't bring to bear the synchrotron radiation, the neutron scattering facilities, and other things that are available in the U.S. to promote the understanding of the materials that are fundamental to this field without getting those agencies involved. And I know I'm speaking from a U.S.-centric viewpoint, but the situation isn't that much different in most countries, and that's, I say, where I'm coming from. So thank you.
Dave Nagel, a few words about what LENR means and the prospects from our moving from pure research to research applied to industrial and domestic use.
On the terminology front, I will spend more than a few words. The moniker condensed matter nuclear science is almost certainly appropriate, because of what we have to bring together experimentally in order to observe the effects that have been seen many times and reported. The terminology low energy nuclear reactions, I believe, is also accurate. And in my view, cold fusion, that is a nuclear reaction that results in two nuclei forming a single nuclei, is a subcase of low energy nuclear reactions. So that doesn't help solve the terminology problem, but I think that the low energy nuclear reactions moniker is A, appropriate, and is B, going to last. Now, as far as commercialization goes, I'm very upbeat on it. A summary of the experimental work to date is that it is possible to get more energy out thermally than you put in electrically. So if you put 1 unit of electrical energy, you get 5 or 25 or even more units of thermal energy out. So think of that in terms of the cost of energy. It could have a dramatic effect on lowering the cost of energy. Oh, and by the way, while these low-energy nuclear reactions are happening, you don't have prompt dangerous radiation as you do with hot fusion or fission. And you don't have radioactive waste left afterwards. And they don't generate greenhouse gases. And they have the prospect of being small units that could be put in homes in small buildings where you could get maybe a few kilowatts out of something less than a meter cubed. So for many, many reasons, remarkable reasons, each by themselves, but all taken all together, I view it as a certainty that this will be commercialized. And I view the field as being now where the transistor was maybe 70 years ago, shown to be a real effect, but not yet turned into integrated circuits that have led to the computer and communications revolution that we enjoy. So it won't happen during my lifetime. It's going to take at least a couple of decades because of the time it takes to produce products, first prototypes, then products, get regulatory approval, consumer acceptance. There's a long ways to go, but I am willing to bet my grandchildren's income, let's say, that this is going to be very, very important in the longer history of humankind.
I just want to expand on that a little bit. Our thoughtful co-chairman, Claudio, has come up with some of these questions, and I have some of these questions as well. So, Dave, you said 20 years. Do you, because people come to us and they really are like, this has been going on for so long, you know, they don't really have the kind of historical perspective of the work that you can offer. Could you point to major points if you were trying to really make a case right now of saying this is what will happen, this is exactly what we're concentrating on now, and where it will go, and a time frame?
Yeah, so that 20 years is to having a product on the market. And for that to happen, we must have control, reproducibility and control. Imagine your automobile that turned itself on and went whatever speed it wanted to go, the way the LENR experiments often do. We must be able to turn it on, turn it up, maintain it, turn it down, turn it off, repeatedly and controllably. Okay, so we're not there yet. And then once we get to that, we have to build a prototype of a product, something that actually works, can be tested to see if it's reliable, see if it lasts, okay? And then you go from the prototype stage to the product stage in-house. And then you go to what's called beta testing. Other people start to use the same thing, okay? And then you finally have something that you can take to the regulators and say, okay, fine, it's nuclear, but it's not dangerous. And they'll go through tests and so forth. And eventually, consumers will or will not accept these. Now, I'm of the opinion that at that point, the acceptance, the consumer acceptance will be ready, even greedy, because here is a safe energy source that you can have in your home that can be refueled on a 6-month basis, every 6 months with a small amount of material, okay, and run reliably, reproducibly, controllably for long times, okay, to produce heat and also electricity. If you make enough heat, you can make electricity. Okay, so I am very bullish on it, but I think there's a realistic timeline involved that is unavoidable.
I want to ask the three of you, because we've been talking about all these things, when you walk out of here, are there some things in particular that you wish we had got to or that you want to emphasize?
Well, I have a very simple-minded view of this field needing 3 things, and they've been touched on already. One is recognition and respect and resources. That's one. Secondly, scientific understanding. If we understood the theoretical mechanisms behind this field, we could design experiments, we could achieve reproducibility, we could achieve controllability, I believe. So that scientific understanding, the second thing, is really critical. And then the third is commercial exploitation for the good of mankind. We must see this through. I say we very broadly, many people, engineers, business people, who are going to get to a point where one can buy this the way one buys batteries. Okay, so I say recognition, legitimacy, scientific understanding, and commercialization are my summary of the needs of the field.